I wasn't supposed to be home. The marketing meeting had been cancelled last minute, some crisis with the client that didn't require my presence. I'd texted Alan to let him know I was coming home early, but he hadn't responded. That wasn't unusual, he often got absorbed in work calls. I unlocked the apartment door quietly, planning to surprise him. Maybe we'd order takeout, watch a movie, have one of those rare peaceful evenings we'd been missing lately. The bedroom door was slightly open. I heard sounds, movement, breathing, a laugh I recognized but couldn't place immediately. I pushed the door wider. Alan was in our bed, with Tessa, my best friend, the woman who'd been my maid of honor at my sister's wedding, the woman who'd cried on my shoulder about her own terrible boyfriends, the woman Alan always complained about, calling her exhausting and too much drama. They froze, the sheet barely covered them. Time stopped, stretched, became something thick and suffocating. Lila, Alan started, his face going pale. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't process what I was seeing. Tessa pulled the sheet tighter, but she didn't look ashamed. She looked defiant. You were never supposed to find out like this. Like there was a good way to find out. I turned and walked out. No screaming, no crying, no questions. Just silence and the sound of my own footsteps leaving behind everything I thought was real. Alan blocked me the next morning. No explanation, no apology, just gone. His number, his social media, everything, like I'd never existed in his life at all. I spent the day in shock, replaying the scene in my head, wondering if I'd imagined it. Then Tessa posted a photo. Alan kissing her cheek, both of them smiling. The caption read, "No more secrets." The photo had been taken in my apartment, on my couch, with the throw pillow I'd bought visible in the background. Comments flooded in immediately. "So happy for you guys. Finally, you look so in love." Nobody asked about me. Nobody wondered about the timeline. They'd already decided this was a love story, and I was just an obstacle they'd overcome. Our mutual friends went silent. Group chats I'd been part of for years suddenly went quiet when I logged on. Nobody reached out to check if I was okay. Nobody asked my side of the story. Within 24 hours, I'd become the awkward one, the too emotional ex, the person everyone pitied but nobody wanted to deal with. Tessa and Alan were the couple. I was just the girl who couldn't keep her man. The narrative had been written, and I wasn't even consulted. The betrayal consumed everything. I couldn't focus at work, staring at my computer screen for hours without actually seeing it. I skipped meals because eating felt impossible. I avoided social media but checked it obsessively anyway, torturing myself with updates about their relationship. They were everywhere: coffee dates at our favorite cafe, movie nights with our old friend group, weekend trips to places Alan and I had talked about visiting someday. Tessa's laughter echoed in my mind constantly, that familiar sound that used to mean comfort and now just meant betrayal. She sat across from me 1,000 times, listening to me talk about my relationship, offering advice, pretending to be my friend, while planning to take him the entire time. My family tried to help. "You need to move on," Mom said gently. "Dwelling on this isn't healthy." My sister was more direct. "They're not worth your energy, focus on yourself." But how do you move on when your best friend is living your old life? When she's sleeping in your bed, wearing the necklace Alan gave her that's identical to one he'd given you, posting photos with the caption, "My person," like she'd invented the concept of love. I existed in a fog of humiliation and pain, unable to escape the constant reminders that I'd been replaced so completely. Reality caught up with me fast. Bills I'd forgotten to pay piled up, red notices appearing in my mailbox. My performance at work deteriorated so badly that my manager pulled me aside. "Lila, I need you focused. Whatever's happening in your personal life, I'm sorry, but it's affecting your work. Consider this a warning." A warning. I'd been at the company for 3 years, consistently exceeding expectations. Now I was one mistake away from being fired. One night, after too much wine and too many hours scrolling through their happy photos, I broke. I texted Alan, "Did I ever mean anything to you?" The response came quickly, "You were a phase, Tessa's real." 4 words that destroyed whatever remained of my self-worth. I'd spent 2 years with him, planning futures, building dreams, supporting his ambitions, and I was just a phase. I called in sick the next day, and the day after that. My apartment became a prison I couldn't leave, surrounded by memories of a relationship that had apparently meant nothing. The girl I'd been 3 weeks ago, confident, happy, successful, felt like a stranger. In her place was someone broken, someone who couldn't even get out of bed without crying. The party invitation had come from an old college friend. I'd almost declined, but isolation was making everything worse. Maybe seeing people who didn't know about the breakup would help. Maybe I could pretend to be normal for a few hours. I walked in and immediately saw them. Alan and Tessa standing near the kitchen, his arm around her waist. She was wearing a dress I'd always complimented. He was laughing at something she said. I froze in the doorway, unable to move forward or back. Tessa saw me first. Her eyes widened then narrowed. She whispered something to Alan and they both looked directly at me. Then she laughed, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Oh God, Alan, look who decided to show up. Don't worry, Lila, we're not stealing any more of your leftovers." Several people laughed. Someone made a joke I didn't catch. Alan smirked, pulling Tessa closer. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably seconds. Then I turned and walked out, my face burning with humiliation. In my car, I sat in the darkness and felt something shift. Not sadness this time, something colder, harder, something that felt like resolve settling into my bones. They wanted me to disappear, to fade away quietly while they lived happily ever after on the ruins of what they'd destroyed. But maybe I wasn't ready to disappear yet. The rumors reached me through a coworker I barely knew. She approached my desk hesitantly, looking uncomfortable. "Hey, I don't know if you want to hear this, but there's stuff being said about you online. In that private group for our college alumni." My stomach dropped. "What kind of stuff?" "Your friend Tessa, or ex-friend, I guess, she's been posting about you, saying you were a toxic friend, that you tried to keep her and Alan apart because you were controlling. That Alan finally saved her from you." I pulled up the group on my phone, scrolling through posts I'd ignored for weeks. There it was, Tessa's carefully crafted narrative. Lila always needed to be the center of attention. When Alan and I fell in love, she couldn't handle it. She tried to turn everyone against us. So grateful Alan saw through her manipulation. Real friends support your happiness. Moving on from toxic people is the best thing I've ever done. The comments were full of support. People I'd known for years believing her version without question. Some even tagged me, asking if it was true. Humiliation burned through me, but underneath it was something else. Fury, cold, calculating fury. I started taking screenshots. Every post, every comment, every lie. I saved them methodically, organizing them by date, creating a timeline of their public narrative. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I was done being erased. The engagement announcement appeared 6 months after I'd found them together. A professional photo shoot, Tessa's hand displayed prominently, showing off a ring that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. The caption made me want to scream. She said yes, when you know, true love always wins. True love, as if what they had was love and not just betrayal dressed up in pretty filters. The post went viral in our social circle. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments congratulating them. Nobody mentioned me. Nobody questioned the timeline. Nobody seemed to remember that 6 months ago, Alan had been in a committed relationship with someone else. The wedding invitation arrived 2 weeks later, for everyone except me. I found out because people posted photos of theirs, excited about the wedding of the year. I'd officially become their villain, the bitter ex who couldn't move on, the jealous friend who tried to sabotage their happiness. In their story, I was the obstacle they'd heroically overcome. The ache in my chest transformed. It wasn't about wanting Alan back. I'd finally accepted that the man I'd loved had never really existed. It was about the injustice of watching them win while I drowned. But drowning people get desperate, and desperate people stop caring about playing fair. My life continued its downward spiral. The warning at work became a demotion, less responsibility, less pay, more humiliation. I moved into a smaller apartment I could barely afford, leaving behind furniture I'd bought with Alan, memories I couldn't pack. I took a side job bartending on weekends, serving drinks to happy couples while my own relationship had imploded so spectacularly. The exhaustion was constant, but it kept me busy, kept me from thinking too much. But I still watched, still waited. I started noticing things. Small mentions in business forums about Alan's startup, complaints about delayed payments, former partners posting vague warnings about working with him. Nothing major, just whispers that suggested his success wasn't as solid as his Instagram made it seem. I saved those too, filed them away in the folder I'd been building, evidence of a pattern I didn't fully understand yet but knew might matter someday. People thought I'd disappeared, given up, moved on. Let them think that. Let Alan and Tessa feel safe, feel victorious. I was learning that patience could be a weapon too. The grocery store encounter happened on a Tuesday evening. I was tired from a double shift, grabbing essentials I could afford, when I turned the corner and nearly collided with a cart. Tessa stood there, perfectly styled even for grocery shopping, her engagement ring catching the fluorescent lights. She looked me up and down, her expression shifting from surprise to something like pity. "Lila, wow, you look tired." I was tired, exhausted, working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, trying to survive while she planned her dream wedding. "I'm fine," I managed. "That's good, really good." Her smile was syrupy sweet, false concern dripping from every word. "I'm glad you're doing okay. Not everyone gets the fairy tale, you know. But hey, I'm sure you'll find someone eventually, someone more your speed." She patted my arm condescendingly and walked away, her heels clicking against the linoleum. I stood there gripping my cart, feeling something break and reform inside me. Not sadness anymore, not even anger. Something colder, more patient, more dangerous. If they wanted to write me as the villain in their story, maybe it was time I accepted the role. But villains in the best stories always had the last word. And I was just getting started writing mine. Late one sleepless night, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. The algorithm knew exactly what would hurt most. Alan and Tessa's engagement photos filled my feed. Professional shots on a beach at sunset. Tessa in a flowing white dress, Alan in linen, both of them laughing like they'd never known pain. The caption stopped my heart. "You make me want to be better." Those exact words. The same caption Alan had written on our 1-year anniversary photo, copy-pasted into his new relationship like our entire history could be recycled. I scrolled through the comments, hundreds of people celebrating them, calling them couple goals, saying they'd always been perfect together. Finally seeing them happy after everything, one comment read, "I always knew they were meant to be," another said. "So glad Alan found someone who appreciates him. His ex was always so negative." My phone slipped from my hands. The betrayal wasn't just personal anymore, it was public. They'd rewritten history so completely that I'd become the toxic ex who couldn't handle Alan's success. Nobody remembered the truth. Nobody wanted to remember that I'd been there first, that this perfect love was built on lies and betrayal. I picked up my phone and started a new document. If they could rewrite history, so could I. But mine would have something theirs didn't, the truth. The party was at a mutual friend's loft, someone I'd known since college but who'd clearly chosen sides. I hadn't planned to go, but a coworker convinced me that hiding would only make things worse. "Show them you've moved on," she'd said, "that you're thriving." I wasn't thriving, but I could fake it for one evening. Alan and Tessa arrived fashionably late, making an entrance like celebrities. Everyone flocked to them, congratulating them on the engagement, admiring Tessa's ring, asking about wedding plans. I stood near the bar, nursing a drink, trying to be invisible. Then someone asked the question I'd been dreading. "So how did you two actually get together? Weren't you both in other relationships?" Alan's smile didn't falter. "We started talking after Lila and I ended. She was already moving on actually, seeing someone new pretty quickly." The lie was so smooth, so confident, that people nodded along. A few even glanced at me with something like disapproval, like I'd been the one to betray him. Tessa added, "It just felt right, you know. Sometimes you meet your soulmate and you just know." Laughter rippled through the group. Someone made a joke about fate, someone else toasted to finally finding the one. I stood there invisible, watching them erase me from their story completely. And I realized my friends, our friends, were letting it happen. They were choosing the comfortable narrative over the truth. By the end of the night, 3 more people had unfollowed me on social media. The professional damage started subtly. A freelance project I'd been promised suddenly went to someone else. When I asked why, the client was vague. We decided to go in a different direction. Then it happened again and again. Finally, a colleague I trusted told me the truth. Alan's been telling people you're difficult to work with, unprofessional, that you let your emotions interfere with business. That's not true. I know, but Tessa, been backing him up saying she had to cut ties with you because you were unstable. People believe them. My reputation, built over years of solid work, was being systematically destroyed by two people who wanted to ensure I stayed down. The rent was late, my credit card was maxed, I was one emergency away from complete financial collapse. I sat in my tiny apartment, surrounded by rejection emails and overdue bills, and felt the last of my hope crumble. They weren't just taking my past, they were taking my future too. The envelope arrived on a Thursday. Expensive cardstock, elegant calligraphy, Tessa's handwriting on the address label. Inside was an invitation to their engagement party. Formal, beautiful, the kind of invitation that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. A sticky note was attached. We'd love to show there's no bad blood, you've grown right. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. The condescension dripped from every word. They wanted me there, not because they cared, but because my presence would prove they'd won. The bitter ex attending their celebration would be the final humiliation. I almost tore it up, almost threw it away and tried to forget it existed. But something stopped me, some instinct that whispered this might be important later. I placed the invitation on my desk, propped against my lamp. Every day I looked at it, that elegant card representing everything they'd taken from me. And every day, something cold and calculating grew stronger in my chest. They wanted to show there was no bad blood. Fine, I'd show them exactly what I'd become. But not yet, not until the moment would hurt most. The coffee shop was near my new apartment, one of the few luxuries I allowed myself. I was reviewing job applications on my laptop when I heard familiar voices at a nearby table. 2 of my old friends, people I'd known for years before the breakup. I almost called out to them, then heard Tessa's name. Did you know Tessa helped Alan get that sponsorship deal? She's the reason his startup is actually thriving now. Really, I thought it was all Alan. No, she's been handling all the business development. Apparently his ex used to steal his ideas, take credit for his work. That's why he left. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. The idea theft, that was new. And it was the most dangerous lie yet. Because Alan's entire business, the startup everyone praised him for, had been built on concepts I'd developed. Late nights when he'd asked for help with proposals, strategy sessions where I'd outlined his entire business model, documents I'd written that he'd presented as his own. I had proof, emails time-stamped and saved, documents with my name in the metadata, everything I'd been too trusting to protect before. That lie, the claim that I'd stolen from him when the opposite was true, finally broke something in me. Not my spirit, my restraint. My apartment grew darker as winter settled in. The heating was temperamental, and I couldn't afford to fix it. I wore layers indoors, worked under blankets, existed in a constant state of cold that matched the numbness in my chest. No more calls from friends, no more invitations. Even my mother had stopped reaching out as frequently, her voice heavy with disappointment when we did talk. Maybe it's time to let it go, sweetheart. Holding on to anger isn't healthy. But it wasn't anger anymore, it was something more focused, more patient. I kept everything organized. The folder on my laptop had grown substantial. Screenshots of their posts, the timeline of their relationship versus Alan's claims, records of the professional sabotage. And most importantly, the business documents. Every email where Alan had asked for my help, every strategy document I'd created, every proposal I'd edited or written that he'd later presented as his own work. I'd titled the folder For Later, because I'd learned that timing was everything. Striking too soon would make me look bitter, but waiting until they felt completely safe, until they'd built their entire house of lies so high that the fall would devastate them, that was strategy. The networking event was a last-ditch effort to salvage my career. I'd spent money I didn't have on a professional dress and registration, desperate to make new connections away from Alan's poison. I was talking to a potential client when I saw him. Alan, perfectly polished in an expensive suit, Tessa hanging on his arm in a designer dress. They spotted me at the same moment. Alan's smirk was instantaneous. He whispered something to Tessa, and they walked directly toward me. Lila, didn't expect to see you here. His tone was condescending, like he'd found a stray dog at a fancy restaurant. Glad you're still trying, that's admirable. Tessa looked me up and down, her smile sharp. You should definitely come to the wedding. Closure's good for mental health, you know. People nearby had started watching, sensing drama. Make sure to dress appropriately this time, Tessa added, loud enough for others to hear. We have standards. Laughter rippled through the nearby crowd. Someone made a joke I didn't catch. Alan's hand rested possessively on Tessa's waist, his eyes challenging me to make a scene. I smiled tightly, my face burning. Congratulations on everything, really. As they walked away, I noted the name on the banner behind them. The event sponsor, Alan's new investor, the one funding his startup's expansion. I pulled out my phone and made a note. Every piece of information might matter eventually. Research became my nighttime ritual. While they posted about wedding cake tastings and venue tour, I dug deeper into Alan's business dealings. The startup he was so proud of had problems, real problems. Financial documents filed publicly showed inconsistencies, numbers that didn't add up, projections that seemed inflated. Partnerships that fell through mysteriously. Most damning were the data analytics reports. Alan had presented them to investors as his own work, but I recognized them immediately. I'd compiled those reports 18 months ago when we were together, spending weeks gathering data, creating models, writing analysis. My name was still in the document metadata. The creation date proved they'd been made while we were together, and his investor pitch deck, the one that had secured his funding, was almost word for word from a proposal I'd written. If exposed, it wouldn't just embarrass him, it could end his business entirely. Fraud, intellectual property theft, misleading investors, these weren't minor issues. But I didn't act, not yet. I wanted the truth to explode publicly, the way their affair had exploded my life. I wanted everyone who'd believed their lies to see exactly what they'd built their happiness on. I wanted it to hurt the way they'd hurt me. The wedding preparations became a media event. Local lifestyle blogs covered it. Tessa's social media showed every detail, the dress shopping, the floral arrangements, the custom invitations that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Planning the wedding of my dreams with the love of my life, she posted, with photos of her and Alan at a venue I recognized. The same venue Alan and I had once toured, back when I'd foolishly thought we might get married someday. Articles appeared, local entrepreneur's dream wedding, interviews where Alan talked about building his business and finding true love, sponsorships from local vendors wanting the publicity. The whole thing was designed for maximum visibility. Their love story, complete with a villain conveniently written out, was being packaged and sold to anyone who would listen. Comments on Tessa's posts occasionally mentioned me. Isn't he her ex-boyfriend? Didn't he leave someone for her? But Tessa had perfected her response. Sometimes you have to let go of toxic people to find real happiness. No regrets. My humiliation wasn't just local anymore. It was documented online forever. Strangers were judging me based on lies, and there was nothing I could do about it. Except wait, and plan, and prepare for the moment when truth would matter more than their carefully constructed fiction. The night before the wedding, I sat in my apartment with everything spread before me. Printed emails, document timestamps, screenshots of their affair timeline, financial records showing Alan's business built on my work. I'd spent hours organizing it perfectly, creating a presentation that told the complete story, not with anger or bitterness but with facts, dates, evidence, truth. I saved everything to a silver USB drive, small, unassuming, containing the power to destroy everything they'd built. On top of the drive, I placed a handwritten note on elegant cardstock, "From your biggest investor, L." Cryptic enough to intrigue whoever found it first, clear enough that Alan would understand immediately. I wrapped it in simple white paper, tied it with a black ribbon and wrote his name on the tag. My hands didn't shake, my heart didn't race, I felt calm for the first time in months. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth, about making sure that for once the real story would be told, about ensuring that the people who'd believed their lies would see the evidence they'd ignored. Tomorrow everyone would see what I'd seen, and there would be no erasing it. I wasn't officially invited, but I went anyway. The venue was beautiful, a historic mansion with manicured gardens, exactly the kind of place Tessa had always dreamed about. Security at the entrance looked at my name on their list and shook their heads. "I'm sorry you're not." "I have a gift for the groom," I interrupted, holding up the wrapped package. "It's from a business associate. I promised to deliver it personally." They hesitated, then let me through. One small package seemed harmless enough. The ceremony area was filled with flowers and elegant chairs. Guests mingled, champagne glasses in hand, everyone dressed in their best. I recognized faces from our old friend group, from college, from Alan's business network. Nobody recognized me at first. I'd changed in the month since they'd seen me, thinner, harder, dressed simply but elegantly. When people finally did look twice, confusion crossed their faces. Alan saw me from across the garden. His jaw tightened, but I smiled politely, holding up the gift in explanation. Tessa appeared at his side, whispering urgently. Alan shook his head, then forced a smile. "Let her watch," I heard him say. "It'll be good for her, maybe she'll finally move on." The ceremony was beautiful, I had to admit. Tessa in her designer gown looked like something from a magazine cover. Alan in his tailored suit played the role of perfect groom flawlessly. Their vows spoke of overcoming obstacles, of finding true love despite adversity. I sat in the back row, invisible among the crowd. Nobody paid attention to me. I was just another guest in a simple dress, unremarkable. After the ceremony, during the cocktail hour while guests mingled in the garden, I slipped into the reception hall. The head table sat empty, waiting for the bride and groom. Place cards marked their seats, champagne glasses already poured. I pulled the envelope from my purse, cream-colored, elegant, with Alan's name written in neat calligraphy. Inside was everything: printed documents, a USB drive with digital copies, and a handwritten note on top. "Alan, inside you'll find documentation of your business fraud, including stolen intellectual property and falsified investor reports. Copies have been sent to your investors, your business partners, and the appropriate authorities. You stole my work and my life. Consider this my wedding gift. The truth. Lila." I placed it beside his champagne glass, positioned so he'd see it immediately when he sat down. Then I returned to the garden, blending back into the crowd of guests, admiring the flower arrangements and taking photos. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. Everything was in motion now, no turning back. Dinner was announced. Guests filed into the reception hall, finding their seats. Alan and Tessa made their grand entrance to applause and cheers, walking to the head table with practiced smiles. Tessa saw the envelope first. "What's this?" She picked it up, examining Alan's name on the front. Probably a card from someone. Alan was distracted, waving to guests. Tessa opened it. The note fell out first, landing face up on the white tablecloth. She read it, her smile freezing. "Alan," her voice was tight. "Alan, look at this." He glanced down, saw my name at the bottom, and his face went completely white. He grabbed the envelope, pulling out the printed documents, spreadsheets, emails, proposals, all marked with highlighted sections showing dates, metadata, stolen work. "What is this?" Tessa's voice was rising. "What is she talking about?" Nearby guests were starting to notice something was wrong. The happy couple had gone rigid, their faces drained of color. Alan was flipping through pages frantically. "This is fake. She fabricated this." "The authorities," Tessa read from my note again. "You sent this to the authorities. Alan, what did you do?" "Nothing, she's lying," but his voice cracked, his hands were shaking. A guest from the next table leaned over. "Is everything okay?" That's when Alan stood up abruptly, the envelope clutched in his hands, and looked toward the exit. "We need to leave." Alan grabbed Tessa's arm. "Right now." "What, Alan, what's happening? What did you do?" She pulled away from him, but he was already moving, pushing past confused guests. "Alan, where are you going?" someone called out. He didn't answer, just headed for the main doors. Tessa ran after him in her wedding dress, heels clicking frantically. "Alan, you can't just leave our wedding." Guests were standing now, murmuring, phones coming out to record the chaos. Alan reached the exit and pushed through the doors, directly into two police officers standing on the other side. "Alan Hughes," one officer said. He froze. "We need you to come with us. We have questions about financial fraud involving your business." "This is a mistake." Alan tried to step back, but the officers moved forward. We've received documentation suggesting you misappropriated intellectual property and misled investors. We need you to come to the station. Tessa appeared behind him, breathless. What's going on? Why are the police here? The second officer looked at her. Are you Tessa Morgan? Yes, but we'll need to speak with you as well. You're listed as a business partner in several of the questionable transactions. Her face went white. I didn't do anything. I don't know anything about his business. But the documents I'd sent showed otherwise. Emails where Tessa had helped present my stolen work as theirs. Messages where she'd knowingly participated in misleading investors. The scene that unfolded was surreal. Alan being read his rights while guests watched in stunned silence. Tessa crying, mascara running, her wedding dress dragging on the ground as officers explained she was being detained for questioning as a potential accomplice. This is wrong, she set us up, Alan shouted, gesturing wildly toward the reception hall. Lila Parker did this, she's the criminal. Ma'am, is there a Lila Parker here? One officer asked the wedding planner. I am. I stepped forward from where I'd been standing at the edge of the crowd. Every head turned. You did this, Tessa screamed. You're insane, you ruined everything. I didn't ruin anything, I said calmly. I just documented the truth. What you did with that truth was your choice. The officer looked at me. You're the one who submitted the evidence. Yes, everything's documented. Timestamps, metadata, email records. All of it proving Alan Hughes built his business using intellectual property he stole from me while we were in a relationship. The fraud is his, not mine. Alan lunged toward me, but officers restrained him. You're nothing, you were always nothing. Maybe, I agreed, but I'm not a fraud. They led him away in handcuffs, still shouting. Tessa followed, sobbing, her perfect wedding day destroyed completely. Guests stood in shocked clusters, whispering, recording, already texting the news to people who weren't there. I stayed until they were gone, until the police cars pulled away. Then I simply turned and walked to my car. Behind me, the venue erupted in chaos. Guests leaving, vendors packing up, the wedding coordinator on her phone probably trying to explain what had just happened. But I was done, finally completely done. I stood in the parking lot, breathing in the cool evening air. My hands were trembling now, adrenaline finally catching up with me, but underneath the shaking was something else. Relief, deep, overwhelming relief. For months I'd carried the weight of their betrayal. The lies they'd told, the reputation they'd destroyed, the future they'd stolen. It had crushed me, changed me, nearly broken me completely. But tonight I'd taken it back, not through revenge, through truth, by simply showing the world what they'd hidden, letting their own actions speak for themselves. My phone buzzed, messages from people I hadn't heard from in months. Did that really just happen? Are you okay? I'm so sorry we didn't believe you. Too late for apologies, too late for them to matter. But maybe not too late for me to move forward. I got in my car and drove away from the venue, leaving behind the chaos, the drama, the final confrontation. In my rearview mirror, the historic mansion grew smaller, the scene of their downfall fading into the distance. Tomorrow the story would spread, social media would explode, everyone would know what Alan and Tessa had done, my vindication would be public and complete. But tonight, driving through the quiet streets toward my small apartment and my modest life, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a year. Free. The betrayal still hurt. The months I'd lost to pain and humiliation couldn't be recovered, but I'd survived, I'd fought back. I'd proven that truth mattered, even when everyone wanted to believe the lie. And somehow that was enough. I turned on the radio and drove into the night, leaving the wedding, and everything it represented, behind me forever. The girl who'd walked in on her boyfriend and best friend together was gone. In her place was someone stronger, harder, more resilient. Someone who'd learned that the best revenge wasn't hurting the people who hurt you. It was simply refusing to let them win. And I'd won, finally, completely, undeniably won.